So when you think of Albert Camus, what comes to mind? Probably the great existentialist thinker, right? A man wrestling with the absurd. Well, we're about to uncover a whole other side to him. The passionate, flawed, and deeply human story that he kept hidden from the world.
Right. This is the Camus we all think we know. The Nobel laureate, the hero of the French Resistance, the intellectual giant. He's this perfect black and white photograph of a man.
Yeah, this is the image that history has basically put in a glass case. Cool, detached, impossibly brilliant. He feels more like an idea than a person. But that's exactly the image we're here to break open.
So what if the real key to understanding Camus wasn't in his famous novels, but in a secret stash of letters that reveal the man behind the myth?
This is it. 865. That's how many private letters he exchanged with one person over 15 years. We're talking more than 1,000 pages of his most unfiltered thoughts, his fears, his passions. This isn't just some little footnote to his life. In a lot of ways, this was his life.
Their story kicks off, and I mean this literally, right in the heart of history, with the whole world on fire. This was not your average love affair. This thing was forged in the chaos of occupied Paris.
It all starts at a party thrown by Jean-Paul Sartre, of all people. Camus is 30, a resistance hero working on an underground newspaper. She's 21, this fiery Spanish actress, an exile, and the connection is just instant. But get this, look at the dates. They start their affair on June 6, 1944, D-Day. Then, after they're forced apart, they bump into each other on a random street corner on the exact same date 4 years later. I mean, is that destiny or just the ultimate absurd coincidence?
And this contrast is just incredible, isn't it? While the massive gears of history are grinding on the beaches of Normandy, literally changing the fate of the world, in a quiet room in Paris, this deeply personal, almost microscopic history is kicking off, and it's about to change 2 lives forever. It's this powerful collision of the epic and the intimate.
Well, let's be clear. These 865 letters weren't just a bunch of romantic scribbles. They were a battleground of ideas. It was like a private salon where 2 of the sharpest minds of the 20th century could meet as total equals. And this shows you just how honest they were with each other. In these letters, we get Camus totally uncensored. He calls Hemingway's macho act fake, just an inauthentic way to deal with the world. But then he praises George Orwell as real, someone who actually had the guts to face reality head-on, no matter how ugly it was. And you see, his philosophy wasn't just for his books. He was living it. He writes to Maria that love isn't about conquering someone else. It's about conquering yourself. That's a profoundly existentialist idea, that love is a conscious choice, a rebellion against your own inner chaos.
And don't think for a second that Maria was just passively listening. Her response is just as powerful. She says their bond is one of choice, which makes it even stronger than family or fate. This right here shows she was his intellectual partner, not just some muse.
But for all this high-level intellectual talk, they were also just people. I love this part. Maria complains about her audience coughing and says she wants to run on stage and give them all cough drops. And Camus tells her about seeing a terrible production of his own play and then having a nightmare that he was forced to dance with the King of England. It's just so wonderfully, relatably human.
Okay, but we can't ignore the other side of the story. This incredible, life-giving connection between them, it casts a very, very dark shadow. And this brings us to the really uncomfortable question at the heart of their story. It's the big one. Can the amazing art or ideas that come out of a relationship ever justify the real pain it causes to other people?
Because the reality is, the romance had a devastating cost. Camus's wife, Francine, fell into a severe depression, and it all led to this horrifying moment in 1954 when she jumped from a balcony. Camus managed to catch her. He saved her life. But that trauma, the feeling of her falling, it haunted him for the rest of his life. And many people believe that dark moment is the inspiration behind his late masterpiece, The Fall.
So you have this bizarre situation where at the exact moment his public star is reaching its absolute peak, his private world was completely imploding.
On the outside, everything looked perfect. He's only 44 years old, and he's accepting the Nobel Prize. To the entire world, he's the conscience of a generation.
But to Maria, he told the truth. He felt like a total fraud. He compared himself to Jimmy Stewart in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. You know, the naive guy thrown into a corrupt world he just doesn't get. That imposter syndrome was eating him alive.
He was getting crushed from both sides.
Publicly, his old friend Sartre launched this vicious attack on him, and he felt totally isolated. And then privately, he was being ripped apart by this impossible choice between his love for Maria and the crushing guilt he felt over his wife Francine. He fell into a depression, and he just couldn't write.
So that begs the question, right? After all this pain, why on earth were these letters ever released? Well, that decision fell to the one person who had been hurt the most.
His daughter, Catherine Camus, held on to these letters for 3 decades. I mean, just try to put yourself in her shoes. This is proof of her father's affair, the very source of her own mother's suffering. But she eventually realized 2 things. First, Maria deserved to be remembered as the brilliant artist and thinker she was. And second, she understood that these letters weren't just a record of a betrayal. They were the one thing that kept her father alive when he was at his lowest.
And this is his last letter to her. He wrote it right after Christmas in 1959. He's about to drive back to Paris to see her, and he's so excited he's literally laughing as he writes. It's a letter just full of hope, full of future plans. Until Tuesday, he writes.
But Tuesday never came. On January 4th, the car he was riding in skidded off the road and hit a tree. He was killed instantly. The philosopher who spent his entire life wrestling with the random, meaningless nature of existence died in the most random, meaningless way you can imagine. It was a brutal, final, philosophical punchline.
So, what do we take away from all this? I think this story shows that what makes someone truly great isn't perfection, it's the struggle with imperfection. It's all the messy parts, the contradictions, the flaws, and the fight to find meaning and love anyway. Which kind of leaves us with one last thought. If your private messages were read 30 years from now, what story would they really tell?